It's not uncommon when I'm speaking with gay men that they tell me that they never necessarily envisioned themselves as becoming parents. Perhaps part of that is because they don't have a uterus, so they wouldn't be sure how they could go about doing it. Certainly, Jay Chapman never expected to become a parent. It really wasn't until someone was sitting in his chair in his salon talking about the two men that she knew who had just used a surrogate to become parents. And the surrogate was in India. Well, that lit a fire, and only Jay can tell you the rest of this story and how it unfolds so wonderfully. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. Today I am speaking with someone who is already a day ahead of me. And I think that that's not because I'm running slowly these days, but really because they're on the other side of the world. I welcome Jay Chapman to the show. Jay, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for getting up early to chat with me. And tell us about who you are and the members of your family.
Well, thank you for inviting me and thank you for having me at 6 a.m., 6:05 a.m. in the morning. I feel sharp, so hopefully this will be a good episode. So my name is Jay, and my partner and I live in a regional town about an hour and a half drive out of Melbourne in Australia with our 11-year-old twins, Otto and Lenny.
I love that. I love that. So how long have you and your partner been together?
Well, I am 38 years old now, and I have been with my partner since I was 17. So, a very long time, a very, very long time. A good long time, but a very long time.
In the queer community, that is not as often spoken about or acknowledged because often we don't come out that young. And then when we do we have to kind of get our bearings and get our feet wet? And is it okay to commit to somebody and that kind of thing for a few years? So good on you.
I think there's a joke where relationships in the gay scene or in Hollywood tend to not last as long. So it's like in gay years and in Hollywood years, this is like 50 lifetimes of.
I think that's pretty much what I would equate it to. Absolutely. In the spectrum of the world, when you hear of the mother maiden or maiden mother crone, I mean that's sort of you're the crones of the gay relationship worlds, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you've been together a very long time and you have 11-year-old twins. So there was a period of time before children came on the scene, but you were quite young, so that makes perfect sense. Did you always know the two of you from the moment you got together and realized that you were madly, deeply in love, that children were going to be a part of your future?
Absolutely not. No, definitely not at all. I think an assumption that I have always made was really the only way that we could have children was adoption. And adoption in Australia is reserved for wealthy, connected, religious hetero couples. And it doesn't matter how filled the orphanages were in overseas or um, uh, how desperate children were to find a loving family. We didn't tick that box. So I didn't bother even letting my mind go there, to be honest. It wasn't an option until it was.
Fair.
So
And is there a public adoption system in Australia, or is everything private when it comes to adoption?
no, there's a public adoption system, but from what I know about it, and things could have changed because
Sure.
it's not my world and reality, is that there was a time where to be qualified to be on the adoption program, you would have to prove your worth, as in like financially.
Right.
You would have to be of good standing, in the community. They would have to do background checks. They would also want to know your fertility status as well. And they would want you to verbally commit that you also weren't trying to have your own baby or in a like an IVF program
Hmm.
to be able to be on the adoption wait list. So very, very, very stringent. Look, I could talk about that all episode and
Hmm.
my opinion on how completely and utterly backwards that is. But in Australia, they really, what's the words? They really favour the biological parents, in my opinion, regardless of the situation.
Right.
And so much so, my sister is a registered nurse, and from time to time, they would have a patient, a young patient in the hospital that was born drug addicted, and, because the biological mother had taken drugs while pregnant, and they would be medically supporting the baby, basically to wean them off drugs. And they would allow the biological mother to take the baby out on like a day release,
Hmm.
as long as she had a drug test. But she didn't have to be positive or negative. It didn't matter. She just had to take the drug test. So she could
Oh,
show up, be classed as positive, drugs in her system, and still be allowed to take the baby out for the day. So a lot of the system was backwards and absolutely fraught with issues on so many different levels.
right. I would think almost in your head, when you know that kind of information where a system is not set up for the best interest of the child, even if it was an option for you, you'd be grateful that you didn't tick that box. That because even if you wanted to help to the best of your abilities, you can't, but at what expense would it have cost you if you were? So it's easier to just say, okay, that's not an option. So then your only option, presumably, is surrogacy. Is that the route that you chose to go?
Well, yes, but I back then I didn't know that was really even a thing.
Oh, okay.
I think if you were to ask me, are you aware that you can have someone carry a child for you if you wanted to have a family? I think I'd be able to conceptualize it and understand the concept and maybe have even read something on the internet about it, but it wasn't a reality for me. So my brain didn't go there. I and until because I used to be a hairdresser,
Hmm.
until I was cutting one of my friend's mum's hair, and she said, I work with two gay guys that they've been to India and they've got a surrogate and they're going to have a baby. And I said, tell me more about that. How does that work? What do you mean?
What is this fairy tale you're speaking of?
Well, exactly. So I was very curious, and she said, when they're back home, I'll take you there. I'm going to visit. So I held her to that
Good.
because I've always been a very curious person and I wanted to know more. So every time she would come in for an appointment, I would quiz her about those boys, those guys that you know. How are they going? What's happening? What's happening? And that was a big learning curve for me. And it actually took until myself and my friend's mum did go to visit these guys, and they had, you know what, I'm going to get them to come on your podcast because
Excellent.
this story will, you'll get more listeners to their story than mine. I can guarantee you that. They have two sets of twins born at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
That is a lot of babies all at once.
so I didn't really have a paternal instinct, or I wasn't really a baby person. I was more connected to the idea of wanting a family.
Right.
So when I walked into this house, basically, nice to meet you, sit down, here's a baby, it's time to feed them. Because when you've got 4 newborn babies, you need help. And it doesn't matter the level of experience of the person that's sitting on your sofa, you get them to feed and change your baby.
That's right. If they have invaded your space, you put them to work.
You're on shift. Yes.
Right.
But I think also that the learning for me around that particular scenario was I never really could relate to hetero couples having a baby. Whereas when you see two men having a baby and what it's like having these two men with a newborn baby, and then being able to think, that could be me.
Hmm.
I could do that. I could be one of them. I could have a baby. It was actually my mind was blown. I like the lid had been lifted off what I thought was possible for me.
Hmm.
Uh, the curiosity turned into, I don't know, this almost clarity of my life could be very, very different. It could be very different from here on. Very emotional, very poignant. It was a big turning point.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so you come home after seeing these four children and watching people navigate caring for them and participating and helping as best you can, having not done it before. And you sit your partner down, and what do you say at that time?
Do you want the polite story or do you want the real story?
Tell me the real story.
All right, good. Well, let's see what some of the listeners had to comment on this on your social media.
There you go.
So, my partner is very conservative, and I'm the decision maker, and I'm the person that says, we need a new car. No, we don't need a new car. Well, I'm going to buy one. Okay. We're going to buy a house. We can't afford it. Yes, we can. Let's buy the house. Let's put the deposit on there. Like, so a lot of the big decisions in our life were always met with a level of resistance because my partner is just so settled and so happy and so content with less and simple. And so I'm the opposite, and we yin and yang and we complement each other.
Right.
Um, I always say that he'd be doing the same thing, wearing the same clothes, living in the same house if I never met him. And God knows where I would be if I didn't have him grounding. So my partner, when I said I'm going to meet these guys, would go, "Oh no, what are you doing? What are you doing?"
So the writing was a little bit on the wall then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came home, and about a week later, I had said to my partner, "We are going to India, and I've booked flights, and it'll be a holiday, and I want to tour this hospital and facility, and I want to meet the obstetrician, the director. I want to see the program. I want to make sure that it's ethical, it aligns with our values, that it feels right, and I just want to gather information and we can do a tour."
Hmm.
A tour didn't exist, by the way. He said, "We are not having children." And I said, "Well, I know we're not having children, but it's India is an amazing country. You've always wanted to go. Let's just go over there and have a look. It'll be just something to do while we're over there." And sign this medical release and this contract. And also, no, it wasn't like that. No, it wasn't
Okay.
like that. But a few weeks later, he said to me, "We're not doing a tour, are we?" I said, "No, we're not doing a tour. A tour doesn't exist." He said, "Okay, hmm,
Mm.
let's see what happens." We I think in the 6 months of booking that tour, we both discussed it, looked into it more. We didn't tell anyone. It was just between Jeremy and I. And we decided that if this checks out and it's all above board and it's legal and we feel comfortable with it, because one thing that was exceptionally important to me, and a lot of intended parents that go down the route of commercial surrogacy, is that it has to be ethical. It
Right.
has to be ethical. You have to feel comfortable with the process, with having a surrogate, with having a donor. making sure that there's no exploitation, that, you're protected legally. I've always been an anxious person and on and off have taken medication for anxiety throughout my life. So it was important that I had some type of assurance, even in my own mind, that things were going to go how I wanted them to go,
Hmm.
which was making sure that everyone's best interest was looked after. And
Right.
yeah, that was certainly the case. So that was good.
You get there, you do the quote unquote tour, you realize that this is a place that you feel comfortable and safe moving forward with, should you decide to start a family. And then how did you use a gestational surrogate or a traditional surrogate? And if you use gestational, did they give you the contact information for different egg donors to choose from?
Mm. One thing that I find really interesting, and uh, it was something that I didn't know either, and so many people still don't know, is that you can have a surrogate mother that carries a an egg that is from someone else that's
Right.
been fertilized with a guy's sperm.
Hmm.
So there's no biological connection
Right.
to the child that you've carried. And still, grown men and women, still to this day, when I tell them that, they say, they might ask about our surrogacy experience. And I say, well, there was three people involved. There was me, because I'm the biological father. There's our donor who donated the egg. And then there was our surrogate that carried the child. And they go,
Right.
wait a minute, hold on. What do you mean? I didn't
Yes.
know that was possible.
Yes. Yes. And you're right. A lot of people don't recognize that that is the case of a gestational surrogate, that they are only surrogate as the gestating person, but a traditional surrogate would then use her own egg to be
Yes.
fertilized. And so you went with the gestational surrogate, but that offers also sometimes a peace of mind, because one of the questions that people assume or worry about, especially if they're outside the duo that has hired someone to carry in birth for them, and so they haven't built that relationship and there is no connection, they worry that once the surrogate gets pregnant, all of a sudden she's going to want to keep this child that isn't hers. But you can minimize that worry to the best of your abilities when you know that it's a gestational surrogate who doesn't have a biologic connection. They are just simply carrying the child and birthing the children, in this case for you, that they wouldn't have that same desire. I mean, any surrogate I've ever spoken to always says, I waited until I'd had my children. I was finished creating my family. And then I took this step because I wanted to help someone else. It's not about
Mm.
increasing their own family, but I would assume for some people, knowing that there isn't a genetic connection to the surrogate offers them a peace of mind, as I say, when they themselves don't have any kind of a connection with her.
The other option wasn't an option.
Okay.
So even when we met with the director and we found out information, they very quickly told us that it is the only option is for what they refer to as commercial surrogacy, because
Okay.
money changes hands
Right.
and they financially benefit. That's most of the reason why they do it. It's not to give the gift of life, it's to have an upper hand financially. And it makes the process much easier because legally it's not their biological child.
Mhm.
Due to Indian law, by default, even if we don't sign any papers of like their birth certificate, their citizenship, by default, they end up becoming Australian by default and my biological child and having no legal connection to the surrogate mother. But also, this particular clinic, they get a verbal commitment, I suppose, that the surrogate mother and her family have finished having their family. So they have had to have had children and say, I'm done.
Right.
Um, and the only reason they do that is because of the emotional well-being of the surrogate mother, being in a
Mhm.
different frame of mind, being at that stage of life. as you just mentioned.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you always are concerned around any surrogacy arrangement, regardless of the context of the emotional and mental well-being of the person that's carrying your child, because they've never done this before. So how will you know when how you will react when you give birth to this child, even if it's biologically not yours?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and in fact, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a friend of a friend contact me and ask if I would be prepared to donate sperm. Lesbian couple.
Hmm.
I couldn't do it. I had to sit on that for months and months and months. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't know that a few hours away, my biological child was there.
Hmm.
And I'd also seen in my life that someone that you love and cherish and who is an amazing person, their life can flip
Right.
and they go down a very different toxic path.
Right.
And I couldn't reconcile that I would have a biological child out there that wasn't being raised in a loving, caring, safe family. I couldn't guarantee that I would be able to switch off from that and not go crazy knowing that.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing to reconcile when you have had strangers give you this gift and you
Hmm.
can't even do it to someone that you know.
But would it be easier to do it for someone you didn't know, a stranger? Because then it would be somewhere else and you wouldn't know anything about it.
Yes, it would be, but that wasn't the scenario,
Right.
and I couldn't say now whether I'd be comfortable with that. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe ask me in 3 months when I have a think about it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I could blindly do that
Right.
and do what our donor mother was able to do, which was to donate her eggs.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I could do that. Hmm, that's interesting, isn't it?
There you are. Something to think about and ruminate over for for the next
Hmm.
few days. So,
Absolutely.
were you given a catalog of donors to choose from for when it comes to egg donors, and that then you could find someone that hopefully had some similarities or ancestry
Yes.
similar?
Isn't it a horrible thing to say, though, isn't it? Like
Hmm.
commercial surrogacy, the fact that that was its official name, commercial surrogacy. Here's
Yeah.
your catalog
Right.
of women. Like it's even still today, having that said or saying it yourself just seems so dehumanizing and not right. But that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's you pick your surrogate based on whether you like them and feel a connection,
Hmm.
whether you feel comfortable with them, whether you like their husband as well. And then you pick your donor based on their medical history and whether they have nice teeth and good features and lovely skin and
Yeah.
like it's so that part was a struggle. It felt very cold
Hmm.
and you try to inject some level of humanization into it, but it's just not how it rolls. But yes, you're given a catalog,
Yeah.
and you're given a catalog of. It still feels like uncomfortable to say. You're
Hmm.
given a catalog of more expensive donors that are proven, which means that they have donated and they've had live births from their donation.
Right.
And then you're given a catalogue of cheaper donors, which is their eggs are maybe of a lesser quality or they haven't donated previously, so their eggs aren't proven to result in a live birth. And we decided to go from the cheaper catalogue for the first 2 rounds. Why did we decide to do that? It could have been a money thing, Sam.
Sure. Because it's not inexpensive. The whole process isn't inexpensive.
No.
So saving where you can.
I know. Well, the twins are just about to turn 12, so this was like 13 and a half years ago, maybe
Mhm.
14 years ago. Um, it was the difference between 7,000 to up to about $10,000 for um, to pick the eggs, and it was always a live transfer. It wasn't an option to do frozen embryos, frozen eggs, none of that. So
Okay.
when you picked your donor, the donor, if they lived in another part of India, you would pay their expenses to fly into New Delhi, pay your surrogate's expenses to be in the same city at the same time to do a fresh transfer. So we also had to take that into consideration too. And
Hmm.
that also meant that we had to be there as well. So, so you had to then go, okay, I've got a surrogate mother that has carried children to term and have their own children. I've picked a donor that is not proven. We have to fly them both in. We have to do the egg retrieval while we're there donating sperm at the same time to do the fresh transfer. And all of that could cost anywhere from ten to $15,000 and not work.
Right.
So all up, with flights and accommodation and time out, that, it's costing $20,000 minimum every time. And we had two failed attempts with the same donor.
The other piece that I'm trying to think about here is as someone who has a uterus, I know that there are weeks of the month I can't, or there's times of the month I could get pregnant, and times of the month I can have eggs retrieved. But two women in the same spot may not have those schedules lining up. So you also have that needs to factor into this trifecta of events that are occurring.
That was a steep learning curve for me on how that all works,
Sure.
cycles and fascinating stuff. Because
Hmm.
our the director of the clinic would say that there are things that they can do medically to make sure that their cycle is, I don't know, optimal.
All synced up.
I'm not sure. I still don't know enough about it, but yeah, it was a logistical nightmare, and it was interesting because even the director would say to myself and Jeremy, "Okay, this is all lined up. Make sure that you get here in India at least 2 days prior in case your flights get cancelled or anything like that. But for the love of God, do not eat much. Do not eat from street vendors. Be vegetarian while you're here because if you get sick and you
Mhm.
get a temperature, your sperm count is eradicated, and this has all been a waste of money."
Wow.
So I would pack instant noodles and muesli bars in my suitcase and only eat instant noodles and muesli bars for 2 days before the sperm collection.
But at least they had the foresight to tell you that,
Yes, absolutely. And obviously they know that because of that's obviously gone wrong for other intended parents,
right?
potentially.
Yeah.
Mm,
A lived experience, I guess. That's
absolutely.
that you get to
Yes.
benefit from. So two failed attempts, and then did you switch donors? And from there, you were able to successfully conceive the pregnancy?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So we switched donors to a proven donor, and then we went over there for the third time. And what was it? Obstetrician recommended to transfer two embryos.
Hmm.
And the thing is, when you're doing IVF, traditionally, it's like for a hetero couple, it's you're doing IVF because there's some type of medical issue with
Right.
falling pregnant naturally in the timeline that you want to.
Hmm.
So you're potentially taking someone that has got a compromised medical challenge,
Yep.
whereas with commercial surrogacy, the donor's proven, the surrogate's proven, the sperm's proven, and you're doing IVF. So the chance that it's going to be successful is
Hmm.
very, very, very high. It can't be compared with traditional IVF statistics.
Right.
So the chance of having one embryo taken having a single child all the way through term is very high,
Hmm.
but it's also very high to then have twins and both embryos take.
You weren't surprised by that.
No, not surprised. However, our doctor always said, don't hope for twins because there's complications
Sure.
associated with that and risks. But when it happens, it's beautiful.
Twice blessed.
Yeah, twice blessed. Absolutely. But we also knew that we didn't have the funds to do this process twice. And
Right.
the laws were at risk of changing in Australia for this to be an option for us. So if we could have a complete family, then twins is a fantastic way to do it.
Absolutely. Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about Baby Ready because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information. So you conceived twins with a surrogate in India. What were the laws at the time? Was it easy for the surrogate to birth and you have your children, and when they're healthy enough to leave the country, they simply come back to Australia with you and you start the process of legally making them both of your children? And is that an easy process?
No, it's not an easy process, and you can do that process yourself, or you can get an Indian lawyer,
Hmm.
which we decided to engage with a local lawyer in New Delhi, and she was unbelievable. The paperwork was this thick, and I used to always give the analogy of, you know how much paperwork you have when you build a house or do an extension or get a mortgage? Like the paperwork's like that.
Right.
Imagine having a child, the paperwork that is associated with that.
Hmm.
So that's how much paperwork there was. And I'm not good at forms. Uh, in fact, I did spell my middle name wrong on one of the forms and then
Oh,
had
geez.
to get one contract rewritten. Who does that? So, basically, we had the lawyer help us say, sign here, do this. This is what this means. So once you have entered into the commercial surrogacy agreement, you can get all of the contracts, all of the immigration, all of the citizenship stuff prepped and ready to go, so that when
Good.
your child is born, all you're really waiting for is for the children to be deemed able to fly safely,
Right.
because the citizenship and the children's passport, all of that process can be expedited and done very, very fast. What you do have to do is you have to have for Australian law, you have to have the children have a prick test, a blood sample. The blood sample needs to be then sent to a DNA clinic in Australia. It can be private. They need to then prove to immigration that this child is biologically mine, in order to then, apply for citizenship and visas and immigration. But again, we already had our DNA clinic here in Australia, paid for, ready to go. They knew
Right.
what to expect. They knew the process. And our hospital and lawyer helped you preempt all of that stuff and get it sorted.
Nice.
Um, so if your child is born at full term and healthy,
Right.
you can be from birth to being back in Australia about a month.
Okay.
But our twins were born at 33 weeks.
Oh dear. Okay.
So it was a longer process, because obviously they weren't meant to be born yet, and they had to stay in hospital until they were fit and healthy and term.
Right. Two kinds of thoughts come to my mind. If they're born at 33 weeks and So they are available for a prick test for the blood sample and things like that. Are you able to then start working on that ball of
Yeah,
paperwork so that whenever they are deemed fit, you can, so if they're, born at 33 weeks, even if they're 6 or 7 weeks in the hospital, to mature, you don't have to then leave the hospital and wait a period of time to head home with them.
correct. You can start that process, absolutely. Because
Okay.
even if your children are born early, they still have a birth certificate. You're still able to get DNA samples. So
Right.
you can do some of that process. It's also very interesting because our doctor had recommended that we take time off from 34 weeks gestation
Okay.
because basically, when you carry twins, 34 weeks, it can be any time from 34 weeks.
Right.
Of course, the longer the better,
Hmm.
but be prepared. So,
Right.
our surrogate was 34 weeks on the dot on a Saturday, and that was my last day of work on the Saturday. It was my last day, the last day of work for my partner, so that we could nest and get everything sorted.
Right.
And we bought a new house, so we could move into the new house and buy a cot and nappies and bottles and all of that stuff. And the twins were born on the Thursday before that Saturday. So that happened very fast. Our surrogate called the doctor and headaches and felt faint and felt sick. And what's the medical condition?
Preeclampsia?
Thank you. Yes, it was. She had preeclampsia and she had other issues in medical issues in her body that the doctor said that if we can't get her levels that are meant to be normal back to normal, we
Hmm.
are going to have to do an emergency Caesar.
Hmm.
And for the outcome of our surrogate and the twins, of course, but mainly the surrogate, she was quite poorly. So that was only about 8 hours later after she went to the doctor and got admitted to hospital.
Did you stop work early and hop the first plane that you could get there? Was that an option for you?
Yep, we're both self-employed, so we had the choice to be able to tools down and to do that. The when I spoke to the doctor, I said I will be there the next flight. It doesn't matter. Like I'll be there on the next flight. And she did say they're healthy and they're okay, but they're in intensive care in the
Hmm.
humidity crib. They've got a feeding tube in. You will be able to hold them, but for a matter of minutes. If it takes you a day to get here and to get things that's sorted at home, take the day, allow that.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, but we didn't. We booked the
No,
second next flight out.
but it makes sense that that would be what you would be instructed to do, as much as it makes sense that that's not what your heart was going to let you do.
Yeah, we just wanted to be there.
Of course.
And it was myself and my partner and my mum and my auntie. So they had to tools down too
Right.
and come with
Of
us
course.
because we wanted them there and we wanted their support. But my auntie, she worked for herself, and my mum said to her boss, "I'm doing this, and if you don't let me do it, I will quit." In a nice way. Her boss is lovely. Her boss was lovely, but she did say, "Well, that was an option for me. If I have to quit to be able to be there, I will quit and I'll find another job when I get home." Because she really wanted to be there. So
Well, these are her grandbabies, so she
yeah,
wanted to be able to off and she's probably acutely aware of what it's like parenting one wee baby, let alone two wee babies that are going to need. It feels like when they're little, two wee babies require 5 times the amount of help, not twice the amount of help.
absolutely. So it was interesting. But from what I knew with my sister being a nurse, is that most of the time the hospital will keep a premature baby in hospital until they're very close to what would be full term age. However, regulations are different in India.
Yep.
Um, they obviously want the child to hit certain milestones, but even when the twins were around 36 and a half, 37 weeks gestation, but born. I don't know the medical terminology, so excuse me. They didn't need oxygen. They were putting on weight. So the hotel that we were staying at was very close to the private hospital, and the doctor said that you can take the twins back to your apartment, but you need to track their feeding. You have to do this, you have to do that. We will come and check on them every day. We had the choice to have a registered nurse stay with us for $25 a day. We didn't do that, but if we
Mhm.
wanted a registered nurse, $25 for the day shift and $25 for the night shift, we could have had that to keep an eye on them medically. But
Okay.
we had four adults in the one apartment, and the twins were feeding well, they were putting on weight. And the doctor said they believe that they have better outcomes being at home and being held than being in an intensive care unit.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm.
So, at what point did you to bring them home?
It ended up being that we were on a plane back to Australia, and they were at about 39 weeks.
Okay.
So they were only meant to have been born a week ago and they were coming home. But of
Right.
course, they we had to stay in India to make sure that they were well, and
Sure.
checked out by pediatricians to make sure that it was safe to fly. But also, certain airlines won't allow you to fly with newborn babies at certain ages as well. So we didn't want to have to. We weren't that desperate to get home,
Right.
uh, so we were happy to wait for as long as was safe. But as soon as it was safe, we flew out the next day.
Ec- That makes excellent sense. So then all of the paperwork's been done, everything's been recognized. You are the biologic parent, so all that paperwork is probably fairly easy for you. What about your partner? What are the rules and laws in Australia when it comes to out of country surrogacy and making sure that he gets the recognition and documentation that he needs to be a legal parent to your children?
The loophole in Indian law was that I had to go through the entire process saying I'm single.
Right.
That was hard because I think the pro rainbow,
Mhm.
bloody too bad if you don't like it, F off,
Right.
look
Yeah.
the other way, I'm out, I'm proud, I'm gay,
Yeah. Yeah.
that had to be suppressed
Right.
because obviously uh, India has a very different view on same sex couples. So to be able to do this, he is not mentioned in the surrogacy agreement. He's not mentioned in the contracts. He's not on the birth certificate. Only I am.
Okay.
So by default in Australia, he's a legal guardian and he has just as much right as me. If he wanted to
Okay.
fight me, he could.
Right.
But at this stage, he is not on the birth certificate or any legal documentation to do with the twins.
And had you been a single parent, been truly a single parent, becoming a parent in the way that you did, and then coming back, and then you got together with Jeremy,
Jeremy.
would you have been able to? Could he still adopt the children to have, or does he not? He just doesn't need to.
I don't know the answer to that. Let me Google that. I'll message you in a few weeks when I've Googled that because I'm curious. Jeremy and I are not married. We're
Right.
allowed to get married. It's not a priority emotionally, mentally for us. For
Right.
marriage, for him to have his name on a piece of paper, a certificate, or be, recognized as by like a legal parent.
Right.
It's just that doesn't represent much to us. I appreciate that it does for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
it's not that I'm against it or anything. It's just
No.
it doesn't register in our minds that that's important to us. In fact, there's lots of times where Jeremy has said, "Oh, the twins, they're looking more like me now." Oh, wait a minute. No, they're not biologically mine. Okay, never mind. Yeah. So, and other people have said that as well. Oh, I can see Jeremy in Otto's eyes, or oh, wait a minute, no, I can't.
That's not possible.
But I suppose we could firm that up and make it more legal. It's probably a smart thing to do, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, and the only reason I ask, well, because many of the people I speak to who are from the US, they need to do, the non-biologic parent needs to do a second or step parent adoption of a child that they're not biologically related to in the event that something happens to the parent that is biologically related, and that so that the child doesn't become a ward of the state or something like that. In Canada, it's a little easier because from the outset, birth certificates declare parentage and we don't have to do those extra steps, but it's different everywhere. And then I know in Ireland, the non-biologic parent in a same-sex relationship, whether the child was born overseas or at home to a lesbian couple, that child can't, I think for the first 2 years of their life, can't legally be adopted by the non-biologic parent, which, so, I mean, around the world, it's just so messed up
Mm.
because it isn't just simple straight across the board. I say I'm a parent. I say I'm a parent. Let us sign on the dotted line. It's like that for everybody who wants to look and see.
And I suppose, if anything, that's just we both feel so safe and clear in our how we see the children as equally ours. It's negligent of me to assume that things can't change, but I think where I have put so much effort in is in our into our will in case
Mhm.
anything was to happen to us in terms of our finances, our house, who the money goes to, what
Yeah.
happens if I'm incapacitated, who makes decisions on my behalf. We've even written a process of what happens to our businesses and how that will be managed in the case that, touch wood, both of us were to pass away or something was to happen. But
Mhm.
in terms of legally for the children, I'm going to write that on my to-do list and look into that.
Because you needed more to do today.
So thank you for your legal counsel. I appreciate that. So yeah, that'd be very interesting to look into. I suppose the um, when you feel really safe in someone's ability to do the right thing,
Mhm.
it just doesn't register. But stranger things have happened. Hey,
Sure. And that's why you hear stories of many people who pass who don't have any kind of a will in place and things like that. We just don't think about those things, and
no,
we don't, and we trust that they're not going to happen, but they may.
yeah,
And so but I was asking as less for more for legal counsel and more really just because it's so different everywhere. So I was
Mm,
just curious more than anything
yeah,
else.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So the children are older now. From
Mhm.
the outset, they've had two dads and they've known that and they've grown up confident in that. What is the dynamic like parenting two tweens?
Twins. um, it's I can only speak from my one experience.
Sure.
Having twins when they're babies for us wasn't double the work.
Hmm.
Because twins by default get into a routine and a rhythm, depending on how you raise them. But
Sure.
even when one feeds, feed the other.
Right.
If one wakes up in the middle of the night and messes their nappy, change the other one's nappy. But
Hmm.
even we found that for too much information, if one twin would have a poo,
Yeah.
the other twin would almost like sense it or smell it and think, I'm going to have a poo too.
There you go. Oh, it's my turn.
So if you're changing one nappy, you
Mhm.
would always be then changing another nappy.
Right.
So I think it's like 1.5 times the amount of work. But
Sure.
I actually can't fathom how parents raise children with different ages with different needs. You've got baby food for the newborn, and then you've
Hmm.
got a toddler,
Hmm.
uh, and then you've got a 10-year-old who's eating, like, how do you manage having different needs at different ages? That would be a nightmare.
Right. And we know and succeed at what we know, right?
Hmm. So in my opinion, I think it's easier, in
And
my
now
opinion.
that they're older, do they have similar interests? I mean, because that You're right. When they're infants, you can do things together. You can do feeds together. You can change nappies together. You can put them down for naps together. You can do everything together. And then they get old enough and a little bit more autonomy fills their wish list. And so have you got one that's playing football and one that's playing tennis? And so you're trying to be in two different places at the same time, or
Yes, they're complete opposite.
oh,
Lenny is such a girl's girl and very feminine, and like she's 11 years old, and I bought her an eyelash curler and she curls her eyelashes to go to school. You know, she's not allowed to wear makeup yet, but she's such a girly girl. And Otto's such a masculine boy's boy grunting, you know, football and soccer and sports. And they had a sports day last week, and I had two parents call me that were at the sports day of just how incredible Otto performed at this sports day. And he got four second place ribbons, four first place ribbons, and he took out the age category out of his whole school and got the gold medal for the year of best performance. And like, I can barely reach my toes to tie my shoelaces. I'm that unfit. And like, I don't know how soccer works. I don't know whether in football it's called a point or a goal. I kick a ball and it goes that way. So he didn't get that from me. It must be some throwback from distant relatives. I don't know. So, but they're the complete opposite, and they are their complete own independent people with their own thoughts and opinions and
right.
strengths that have not even come from myself or Jeremy. It's fascinating.
That is really cool. I'm cognizant of the time and that they're probably getting up ready for school. But before I let you go, would you please tell me what is your very, very favorite part of parenting these two beautiful humans?
Just having a family, I think the point of time where I felt really a sense of deep sadness was when I was at my partner's house, parents' house in the country, and I was just looking at all the family photos on the wall. It's like a gallery.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Great aunts, uncles, grandkids, children. And I thought our wall of photos is going to be very bloody lonely. Very, we're going to get old and not have any of that. Everyone's
Right.
going to die, and we're going to be left with no one looking after us. That's sad. So I think, apart from all the milestones and the funny things and, you know, the rewards you get from raising young people, it's having a family at what I believe is a complete family.
That's pretty amazing.
Like, that's a gift that I'll never take for granted. It was just the right time, the right options. Like, we're very lucky that we have a family.
Mhm.
So, I think some people just they want a baby. They have that instinct. They want a baby. I didn't
Mm,
have that. I wanted a family.
right.
Mm.
And you do. And it's beautiful.
So I think that it'll always come back to that as my favorite part of parenting is the fact that I can be a parent. That was deep.
That was deep for early in the morning like that. But you said you're on your second coffee, so you're okay. You're
Yeah,
okay.
thumbs up now. See,
There you are. Oh, yes, it is. I want to also give you the opportunity, plug your podcast. What's your podcast?
well, it's all about business actually. Uh,
Oh,
I have a coaching and mentoring company called Your Growth Coaches. My business partner and I and my team coach hair, beauty, salon, spa professionals to avoid making all the mistakes that I made in business. And for my coach, when I had my salon, she said, "What do you want to achieve?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm happy with everything that I've got. But I think I want to have a family, and I'm going to need to be able to save $100,000 cash to do it. And I
right.
think this salon needs to be able to kick out that cash, and I also need to be able to take about 6 months off. So can you help my business do that?" And she thought, how are you going to have a family? How are you going to have children? I had to explain the process to her. She found out, well, before my parents, actually. Um, so obviously, long story short, wanted to help people be able to do the wild, crazy things that I've been able to do with my salon business, like take 6 months out and save $100,000 and have these options to start a family.
Right.
And that's what I do. Mm.
That's amazing.
The podcast is
Excellent.
all about that journey.
Well, and that's an amazing journey. And there's an awful lot of people in the world who will benefit from your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time today to chat with me and tell me about the family creation story that you have.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
As a queer individual with colonial lineage, I want to first acknowledge the land upon which I live and work. Being from what is now known as Burlington, Ontario, I recognize the original ancestry of these lands as they span from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond. These lands are steeped in Indigenous history that benefits my community every day. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land dictates everything about our ways of being. Particularly, the land teaches us about fluidity. Concepts of the binary system and heteropatriarchy were imposed by the colonials who were, at the same time, removing children from their homes, families, and all that was familiar to them. These same children were divided by the only two prescribed binaries recognized by the settlers, and they were forced to conform to a performative, gendered falsehood. The land doesn't operate under binary thinking. It is diverse, complex, and unpredictable at times. Rather, the land holds us and all of our remarkable paths and identities. Every organism and spirit has a purpose. It is from this understanding that I strive to live and grow. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.